Hello, everyone. Welcome to High on Paranormal. My name is Carlos, your host. I apologize for taking so long for another episode. I really am trying. Happy New Year to everyone. I know I posted on Facebook that I was the very next day, like sometime after Christmas, I was going to post something no matter what. And then we got sick. As a self-made half or part-time stay-home dad, it's hard with a baby. So we do have another podcast, also New Parents for the second time. And that one goes like a baby journal, just a parent's journal. And so now let's see. On the other hand, today we got a couple of stories. One is going to be The Witch. Another one is going to be Possession of a Child. And we're also going to be having a story by a Redditor. It's not a story, it's more of a looking for some assistance maybe, or some information. So, we're going to go ahead and start with The Witch. And this one, none of my friends and family really want to be ousted as the ones telling the stories and stuff, so can't tell this one either. But it's one of those, again, I have always heard throughout my entire life. And so here we go. I'm gonna tell you something. This happened to my grandfather around 1954, more or less. I was around 3 or 4 years old. Based on the things that happened, I calculate that I was around that age. My grandfather had an hacienda, a ranch, back in Venezuela, and it was a cattle ranch. In this ranch, or hacienda, they used to have about 5 or 6 horses that they used to do all the things that they needed to do around the farm, the ranch. And so one day, started like any other day, but then something weird happened. All the people who worked in the farm, the farmhand, started to tell my grandfather, particularly this one man, went and told my grandfather, look, Mr. Jose, at around 4 in the morning when we were looking for the horses at the stable, well, the horses, they had their tails in a braid. And the weird thing, is that they weren't even tied down. And by that, he means like, normally like with a woman's hair braid or any hair braid that you do, you gotta put something at the bottom of it to hold it together, especially with the horse's tail, because they're so straight that they automatically get undone. And so he continues, I asked the rest of the workers to see who did it, but they all denied having done so. And after that, we just started looking around to see if we could find out, maybe look who was braiding their horse's tail. And so around, I don't know, it was around the middle of the night when Juan and I were doing guard, and we just turned around. We got distracted for about 5 minutes, when all of a sudden, being late at night, all of the horses' tails were braided again. We didn't see anything, we didn't hear anybody go in or out of the stable, and it was just the two of us. Juan and I didn't know how to tell you this because we know that you don't believe in this kind of stuff, but that's the truth. My grandfather didn't really believe in this kind of things, and he tells her, well, let's go fix this issue because something else is going on here, and there's somebody just being naughty. One of the nights he stayed up, he made sure to get his rifle. He told everybody in the house to stay inside. All the workers and family members and everybody. Nobody come outside. If anybody comes outside, he's going to be shooting at them. So because he's done with those games. That had been going on for a while now. And so he went into this little area, like a room by the stable, where he had a good visibility, and he could also be out of sight at the same time. But when he was, standing there, now keep in mind, this room doesn't have solid walls per se. Instead, it was like a wood material, like just having the frame with some metallic fence around it, covering it up. And so he just sat there all night, he's telling us, and he says, I never slept. I was paying attention to the horses the entire time until around 4 o'clock in the morning. When I get up, I go around the corner towards the house, and as soon as he comes out of the spot where he's at and next to the horses where he was watching them and guarding them, well, he just comes out that their tails were braided. And that really started to get his attention, because he was asking to himself, what's going on here? How is it that all of this is happening within seconds of me just coming out of this corner? And so, to turn around, everything already done, tails braided and everything. And so there was a lady who worked there in the hacienda as a cook for, the labor. And she tells my grandfather, look, Mr. Jose, this is that it's happening is because of witches. And he tells her that, he doesn't believe in them, that they don't exist. But she continues to say that, yes, they do exist. He might not believe in them, but that doesn't make him non-existent. And he says, look, you can test this out. You can take salt, put a lot of salt. And I don't mean the regular cooking salt. I mean the salt that the animals eat. And you take a lot of those, and you put it all around the stable and around the horses every night. And you will see they will never happen again. And he thought, she's just crazy. But after a few more days of the same thing happening and nobody being able to be found for it or see who is the culprit of it, he decided to just go ahead and do it to appease them all. You know what? I am trying everything possible. And so I don't know if at the end were the employees, making a joke on him or something like that. But ever since he started doing that, I think they did it for about a few days or so. And so it never happened again. And so with that, my grandfather still believed that it was somebody else doing it. Everybody else denied having anything to do with it. So I'm not a big believer of witches myself, but if there's something there, if sounds are being made, if noises, things happens, you can't really tell. I mean, there may be something to it. Well, I hope you enjoyed my story. And now, that story, I really liked it, because that one actually, it's just, I don't know, I've always gone over there and hang out as a kid and stuff like that. So later on as a teenager, I found that out, or I started to hear those tales, and it was like, oh my God. So finally I got a little bit of a more complete version of it. Now, me personally, I don't really, I don't think about witches one way or the other. It sounds too much like Hansel and Gretel, or like the big bad wolf. But again, I haven't seen anything either way or the other. I mean, there was a tale because my mom's side of the family is from a very small town, a sugar town. Literally, the town was made just for the workers of the company. And they say that many, many years ago, in the 50s or so, all the neighbors one day came out of the house, their houses, everybody in the little town, at around 6 or 7 in the morning, because it felt like, or it sounded like, somebody was taking a metal rake and running it through the roof. Now, these are roofs in very, like I said, not the best houses, and they had metal roofs. So metal on metal, screeching sound that apparently the entire town heard at the same time. Everybody came out like, what was that? And nobody could ever find out. Now, that's the kind of story that I just always heard. And that was by one and two of the actual neighbors in the town itself, my grandparents' neighbors, who told us that, us kids. But never been able to really get this side of that. So I'm still trying to ask other cousins and family members and aunts and uncles to see if anybody knows anything about it, heard anything about it, or anything like that. But that's it. That's how these stories are coming along, from those we heard about it and now asking about it. By the way, if you hear a little or something like that, that's because I'm on daddy duty. And little baby is here with me today. But now let's see. To the next story, it's not a story actually. It's more of a question. This one is from a person in Mexico. And well, I'll tell you that they basically just having a few experiences in the house, and they would like to know if me or anybody else knows something about it, maybe some recommendations. This is not the original post, but I reached out to them about being able to use this for the podcast, and they agreed to it. They sent me basically a little bit more information than what they posted. And so this is by Legend Pika. I mean, the actual handle is GKS Legend BICCA. And so it says, okay, I'll tell you. But, well, there's really not much to tell. There has been about a little while ago since I moved here with a roommate. And since the beginning, things seem weird. My roommate has two small kitties, and the next day from when I arrived, the smallest kitten, she, I don't know, about 2 or 3 months old, and it was always by the door looking towards the hallway, and then she will just start growling and lift her back and everything, just like when they're getting ready to fight, like if something's scaring her, because she will then just start taking off running under the bed. Now, with time, she started to calm down, but every so often she would just not want to come out of the room. One day I was leaving my room, I went to the bathroom, and I found it locked. And well, I thought my roommate was in the bathroom. And so I was just waiting. And after a while, I talked to him, but nobody answered. And a little while afterwards, she comes out of her room asking me what was going on. And so I told her that the bathroom was closed but nobody was there. I mean, we just opened. It wasn't locked anymore or anything like that. So we looked inside. We didn't see anything. And, well, we just didn't pay attention to it. Now, we have had things happen like this, either me, her, and her daughter, who comes over every so often. It has also happened to her. And my roommate, she goes out a lot, so she's not usually at home, so it doesn't happen to her as often. But the last time the thing with the bathroom happened to me was about 2 days after that, because I got up normally. It was a Saturday, and I didn't have to work, so I just got up a little bit later than normal. And I really had to go to the bathroom and pee. And so it was around 10 in the morning. I was by myself. And when I left the bathroom and I tried to get back into my room, well, that door was locked. Like literally not closed, but locked. And so that was really weird. Thankfully, I had my keys in my pocket and I was able to unlock my bedroom. But why did he have the lock on? So it's one of those things where you just push it aside. I just thought, you know what? I must have just really slammed the door when I closed it and the lock set itself. But it's the kind of thing that we all know that doesn't really happen. At least I haven't seen it. And so, well, after that, I don't know. I don't know what to think. And although I haven't seen it myself, some of the other people, the neighbors, have told me that they have seen, or even when they come here, that they have seen somebody look through the windows or walking inside the house. And I don't know how is it the doors are locked. What is it they see, or what's going on here? So with that one, for example, I don't really know much about so. And so, but I don't know, we're talking to my mom about something else, actually talking to her about the podcast, and her telling me that I shouldn't be doing this kind of podcast because it can attract certain things, entities and such. With the belief that they're always around. Bad entities are always around. They're just waiting for an opening, for a chance. And so she believes that this could be one of those things that just stirs things up. And she tells me, listen, there are times where I will just start hearing things or feel things or see things. And that's when I just go ahead and make sure to, you got to expel them. You got to kick them out. You got to, I take holy water and I spray it around the house. I open my windows and I tell them to get out. Just like if I would be kicking out somebody that I really hate and I do not want in my house. And so I thought about, maybe that's something that he can help her out. And so I reached out to him, and let him know that a few days ago after my conversation with my mom, because I think I need to do the same thing just to be sure. I am a believer of the paranormal, and I do believe that these kind of things can attract it. So might as well just try it out and make sure to do my best. And so now the next story, it's longer. This one, again, is all, I believe, the entire story. I would love to be able to tell you who it is, but not a possibility right now. Maybe in the future. And so this one, it's also in Spanish. And so I'm just going to read it onto English and do a site translation of it. I hope the previous stories have not been ruined by me doing the site translation. It helps me out with practicing stay sharp for my job, And so, here we go. This story has been redacted to safeguard the identity of the people involved, places where they took place, and with the exception of the city. Good afternoon. I'm going to start this story by telling you that it took place in Maracaibo, Venezuela. It's a very particular state. It's always summer, and that allows to be able to enjoy pool parties, barbecues, and such things year-round. In Venezuela, you can find a mix of all kinds of nationalities and religions. but Catholicism is the main religion in the country, especially around the 1989, 1990 years. Like in any countries deep in religion, we celebrate various festivities based on saints, angels, and other religious figures. But one day we were just hanging out at my brother-in-law's house. Let's call his wife Maria. And that day, we'll call him Sam. So we were at Sam and Maria's. I believe that day was supposed to be a message from Virgin Fatima or something like that. We were also set to put little crosses, like wooden crosses made put behind the doors. And so we were towards the back of the house having a few drinks. Well, I didn't drink, everybody else was, but we were having a barbecue. Kids were playing and swimming by the pool. And around 8, 9 o'clock at night, there were about 3 little girls in the pool. One of them was my niece, along with 2 of her cousins. And then, now this was on the side of my husband's family. When all of a sudden my niece, who I'm going to call Betty, she just started screaming and crying, and she started to point towards the roof and saying that there was a man on top of the house. And so we all looked, but we didn't see anything. Of course, she just continued to cry, kicking, just acting out. We had to get her out of the pool. They wrapped her around a towel. They told her, look, there's nobody up there on the roof. But she would just continue, getting like emotional crisis or something. When they take her to her room, she kind of calms down, but a while later, she starts once again kicking and screaming, such force that they couldn't really handle her. And so they were asking her to please just calm down. She was just scared. And even more, you know what? Her dad and uncle are going to get up on the roof and they're going to go check it. So her uncle gets a ladder. They climb, check the roof, but there's nothing. Like, honestly, there was nothing. Obviously, if they found somebody up there, it would not be something to just go down quietly. But when they get down from the pool, they go towards the back of the house where the people are still together. And they try to explain what was going on with the girl. And while they were talking there, they look into the pool and they notice that the water was just kind of like murky. Not that long ago, I mean, just a few minutes ago, it was completely crystal clear. And so they thought that maybe the lights towards the back of the pool were getting dimmed down or losing power or something, because, it just looked odd. So they go around and they looked, but no, it was still murky, just murky water. And so when they go in, back into the house, they're talking about the dirty water or, the murky water in the pool and stuff like that, kind of cloudy. And how could it happen so quickly? Ooh, sorry, I need a little coffee. Betty's dad, Samuel, he's a doctor. Well, actually, both of her parents are doctors. And they decided to take Betty to the clinic because it was just such an odd situation that they really need to check. When they get there, they actually end up getting some sedatives and painkillers. I'm not really sure what was they gave her, but they just calm her down. And after like 3 or 4 hours, doctors tell them that they couldn't find anything, nothing at all. No high blood pressure, no issues whatsoever. So we all family members stayed at the house until very late, like 2 o'clock in the morning, and she gets another of those crises. And I say crisis because at this time, we don't know what to think. I mean, that was the most similar thing too. She would scream, kick, and the most impactful thing is that like her uncles, who were very strong men, and she was only about 7 or 8 years old, they could not handle her. Well, I mean, her dad had to inject her with a sedative to calm her down. And once again, the next day, they take her to the clinic. Maria, the whole way there, is saying things like, I'm a doctor. I don't know what's going on here. I need to know what's happening. And so they bring her to the clinic, more exams and checkups. She was there for, I believe, 2 days or so while they were doing all those exams and stuff. But they had to sedate her because on the second day of being at the clinic, she started to get another of those crises. And that's when they have to sedate her again. She falls back asleep, but the doctors continue to say that they can't find absolutely anything at all with her. So Betty's dad, Sam, all shocked and in dismay, goes and talks to his wife before going back home with Betty. When arriving to their house after this whole situation had completely changed, I mean, she wasn't the same girl, or she had a lost look, like out in this space. If it wasn't that, then she looked angry. And she literally just would go into her room, slam the door with such a force that it's like if she just wanted to make it spin. And so her dad would have to go in and say, please don't be slamming on the door. I mean, those are not good manners. Like, that's not how you behave. And she would look at him and say, why are you looking at me like that? And then she starts laughing. And he calls his wife, Maria, and, what's going on with her? I really don't know. And so when Maria arrived, Betty tells her to get out. I don't want you. And Maria starts to say things like, what is going on? Why are you doing these kind of things? Why are you saying these things? And that's when Maria tries to hug Betty, and Betty pushes her. And then she just starts to laugh once again, really maniacal kind of laugh. And so at that moment, he tells his wife, no, I don't like it. We got to go back to the clinic. And so they take her back to the clinic to do some more exams, try to figure something else out that they may have not tried. And they did things like encephalograms and whatnot. And so, other ones just as similarly complicated. Doctors would say that there was nothing there. And so they leave and they get it out of the clinic, but they decide not to go to their house. They decide to go back to their grandmother's house. And so that would be Maria's mom's house. And then when they finally arrive, they go in, and as soon as you walk into the house, there was this portrait that it looked like, how old portraits look like they're kind of looking at you, the Mona Lisa effect. There was a portrait of my husband's dad, and he had already passed away. But when we walk in, first thing that Betty says is, what are you looking at me? And we were all kind of like, what's happening here? So we ask her what's going on, and she says that she doesn't want him to look at her. And, well, but he's not looking at you. That's a painting, baby. That's your grandfather. And so she just continues to go ahead and say that, I don't want to see him. Tell him to leave. Tell him to get out. And that was the first reaction that she took as soon as we got home. And then without us knowing, she goes ahead and says that she already knew that her grandfather was dead. Her grandfather, the one in the painting, wasn't going to do anything to her. So why be so afraid about it? And that's when they just brush it off. They go back into the room. They take her over there. There's 3 of her uncles and her dad. So 4 adult male. And she started acting out in such a way that once again, they could not handle her. Now, this is our days that it's been going on for it. And so all you could hear were the screams and kickings and just very, very bad mouth, bad foul language. And I mean, I wasn't there inside the room to see this, but you could hear it from outside in the hallway. And so, well, Samuel decides to inject her once again with a sedative because it's the only way that she can actually be most of the time okay. And he's in shock. And he just starts to cry. He asks why. I mean, he doesn't understand why his little girl all of a sudden just changed. She used to be so ready to help. She liked to pray. She was quiet, sweet. But ever since that moment that she said she saw somebody in the house, she just turned into a completely different girl. Completely different character. And so they all, after that, the night went kind of quiet. They're holding her in her arms. Maria, I think, is holding her in her arm. But all of a sudden, Betty just wakes up and pushes her and said, "I don't want you here. You're nobody to me. Why are you hugging me?" "What do you mean I'm nobody? I'm your mom. What's happening?" And Betty continues to laugh. "You're not my mom." And, "Of course I am. What do you mean? I am your mother." And so now I'm not your mother. You're not my mother, and I'm not your daughter. You know who I am? So who are you? And Betty starts to laugh, and it gives the first and last name of her grandmother. And so that's when it really gets weird because her grandmother had passed away. And so she continues to laugh, like really loud laughing, and it continues to say several times, "I don't love you. I don't want you. You're not my mom. I don't love you. I don't want you. You're not my mom." And with in mind, I mean, Maria's head was just spinning at that moment, and says, "Well, you can't really be her because she's dead. And so you gotta stop playing like this because this is not nice. Your dad is gonna get upset." And says, "Well, if you're not dead, tell me, where you used to live?" Says Sam, just to try to get her to stop. And that's when she says, "I used to live on such and such," gives the address. And Sam gets in shock, but not as much as because of the address that his daughter should not have known, but because of the voice in which she said it. It was like this deep adult voice. And he says, Samuel says, "There's no way you can be that person. She's not in this earth anymore. She died a long time ago." And so Betty just grabbed one of the decorations around and smashed it. I don't remember what kind of decoration it was that they had on the table, but she just grabbed it and smashed it really hard with such a force that it really just shattered everywhere. And she tells him to get out of here. And they had, like, literally, they were, it was such a difficult thing to see, the physical struggle between them trying to hold her down. And Betty hitting her mom, like to the point that she fell down and kind of like on her butt set her down after hitting Maria so much. And so Maria gets up to try to go to Betty and hug her, kind of like to force that love onto her, and it just continues on it and continues screaming at her. So Maria, calling for her husband, one of the other brothers go in and says, "Listen, this is not normal. She's talking to dead people and there's something weird happening here. So let me call this lady that I know. She's a spiritist and she would be able to maybe help us out with some of this." And so they call the lady. She agrees to see Betty. And when they arrive, Betty started to fight with the lady. And then she will take whatever she get and like throw it and stuff like that. And the lady was like, look, there was something added or done to the house, and she was the one that caught it. And it's a very bad spirit that she has on her. And so they're shocked because they couldn't believe it. Sam would say, I'm a doctor. This can't be happening, just like Maria was saying it. This can't be. And so the lady at that moment tells them that Betty is being taken over by Samuel's mom's spirit. So by her grandmother, basically. And so as this spiritist, this lady goes ahead and starts talking to what is supposed now to be Sam's mom, asking her, birthday, maiden name, place of birth, things like that the child wouldn't know. But she still answered correctly. And so they continue on this back and forth, but Betty is always as well just acting out. The answers are kind of like being forced out of her. And as she's kicking and screaming and just screaming like if somebody's murdering her. Like if they were not present there, they would have thought somebody was killing their daughter. So they had to grab her by the hand and feet. They start putting holy water on her. And the more holy water, the louder she will scream, and then she will start laughing, like cackling, and she will then stay quiet and not move. You didn't know if she was just awake or sleep with her eyes closed or what kind of weird stuff. But all of a sudden she will be like waking up and then ask like, Daddy, what happened? Why are we here? What's going on? And they do nothing else but just pick her up, give her a hug, say, nothing, baby, nothing's going on. We were just visiting a friend and we're heading back to your grandmother's house. But as they're heading back to the house, again, the same, what we call a crisis continued to go or to happen at that moment. And so every time, though, that happened, that she got one of those crises, she kind of passed out, wake up, and it was like she just woke up from a sleep without remembering anything. So when we get back to the house, once again, she's like nothing. And now this is a cycle back and forth of what's going to, this behavior going on. And her other uncle suggests to go ahead and bring her back to the lady. Let's just drive back over there because this is very strong for us. We're not able to do it. And she agrees to have her over there, but that she needs a little extra time so that she can find somebody else to help her deal with it. And so once they get over there, they do a cleaning, like a cleansing of her, where they take like this bouquet of leaves and they just like smack her with it. Kind of like whips, but not with such force. So they try to cleanse her and everything, but it didn't seem to work. Now, at this moment, when they come back, Sam was saying, or they were mentioning how Sam, at that moment, he just broke down. He wasn't able to take it because while Betty was saying that she was her grandmother, she continued to talk to Sam as Sam's mom, saying stuff to Sam that everybody seemed to have been in shock, and he was like, okay, there's no way that this is not her. This has to be my mom, because those are the things that she used to say to me. And so they all get very, very scared. Just like, this is impossible. They light up a few candles, do some prayers, put more holy water on her, and the sign of the cross, and so on. The regular stuff that you would do in that kind of situation. And she, like anytime that she has one of those crises, she passes out. She wakes up a few minutes later and completely at a loss, not knowing where she was and what was going on. And so at this moment, they didn't know what else to do. They go back to the house, and then it was a very weird situation because we were afraid of her at this point. We didn't want to really get close to her because she could hurt us. She, not only by hitting you and punching you and biting you, but throwing things and stuff like that. And she was very hard to control. All these adult males at that, weren't able to control her, and they had to like tie her down and stuff. So we're not talking something of just a kid being, in a bad mood and throwing a tantrum. And so that's when, after this whole situation going on for a while now, my husband brother goes ahead and says that he actually was able to find out of this nun, who's a Franciscan nun, and she goes by the name of Sister Mother Francisca, and she deals with this kind of situations, possessions and so on. Why don't we go see her? And so they reach out to her. She agrees to go ahead and take a look at Betty, and when we get there, they meet with her and the priest from the church itself. But as soon as we got there, Betty he got so enraged that this is the closest she would have been compared to a demon. We were there for about 3 hours, and the transformation was such that she gave out who she really was, apparently, and it wasn't her grandmother, as she was saying, but it was the spirit of her sister. And so this sister had already passed away. And Maria, that really affected her because, that was her first daughter. And so Betty continued to talk to Maria, telling her stuff and talking to her as her deceased sister. And so to prove that it was her, she started to sing that song that she liked as a child, but the Betty didn't get to know because she was just too young to be able to. I'm not even sure if she was even already born at that point. And so now, remember, this is a long time ago, and it's hard for me to remember everything with exact dates and such. But the Mother Francisca just kept repeating it to them. Don't listen to her. She is not who she says she is. This is a very bad entity is in her, and I don't want anybody to listen to her or to get close to her unless you're holding her down. You're helping me restrain her. And so, to make this story short, because he's gone for very long at this point, Betty later on ended up having an exorcism at that church after several visits and encounters with Mother Francisca. I was not there for those, but as I was told by my sister-in-law, my husband, my brother-in-law, and their brother-in-law, they were all present, and they said that it was something shocking, impressive. I mean, there was a moment the Mother Francisca almost falls to the floor from being attacked by Betty, especially when the force of the entity leaving her. I don't really know how to explain that because it wasn't explained very well to me either. But they did feel in her extreme calm and quietness afterwards in the church. That she once again woke up as she had done previously from any time that those crises happened, and asked why they were in the church, gave him a hug, said that she was hungry and very sleepy. And so thankfully that was the very last time that kind of situation happened. Now, this story, believe it or not, is a redacted and short version. This happened for about 2 months. Betty has never known about this, so she she can't talk about or anything because he has no knowledge about it. And up until this day, she is now married with 2 kids, and she has a life completely ignorant of what happened to her and the possession that she suffered when she was between 7 and 9 years old, somewhere around there. And so this is something that Mother Francisca also just says, don't talk about it, ignore it, act like nothing ever happened, and just don't bring it up anymore. And so we never did, and we believe that she's better off this way. Now, one thing that she does say is that she recommends to never, ever go ahead and talk about spirits and stuff like that, because they are always around us, just like anybody else would. Just like when you have a thief looking around for your houses, please be careful. Make sure that you don't invite anything in. You may not believe in it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Now, I know that I say it all the time, that, oh my God, this story, I really like it. But you gotta realize, these are all the stories that I wanted to explore as a kid. So this one is the first one I ever heard about possessions and stuff like that. Especially, by that I mean as with somebody relatively close to us, where it's not the friend of a friend of a friend of a cousin of a friend of a neighbor. So, one thing to pay attention to, in my opinion, for example, is that in this situation, I finally read it says that there's this other lady, spiritist or whatever, who, she believed that it was possession, but I don't see like she had the knowledge to actually know what was going on, and she just read what was obvious type thing and try to help. I'm not gonna say that it was a farce and just trying to take money or whatever, because I don't even know if anything was paid. But we find that so much in the real world that that's why I never go around looking for card readings and whatever, because to get that 1 out of 1,000 who actually has the gift and is not just out to get some money, and it's so random, so hard. I've never found one. And I've known, there's one person in my family who reads the cards, and I am not convinced that it tells you what it is. So I think we're just reading into actions and reading certain things and, giving the most educated result at that moment. But educated guess on the result. But I guess I just don't have enough experience with that side itself. Now, do I believe that Mother Francisca was that good at it? Oh yeah, because I actually started looking it up and online, and you can find her. And I'm actually going to post a picture of her on the Facebook page, or when I post the episode. That way you can see it if you want to look it up. And apparently she did that a lot for many years. She was like one of the go-to people, kind of like Lorraine and the Warrens over here, Ed and Lorraine Warren. But it was her, and she was the church and the whole thing, like really badass. So that's today's episode for the moment. I thought I may have had another story, but I am not ready with that one yet. And I still have to do the Spanish version of this. Now, if today's episode sounds different, Never mind the baby in the background earlier. I am really just trying to get episodes out. And for the past month and a half, I've been trying to get one out, and I feel like it needs so much work and perfection and whatnot that I never put it out. So I'm using the Spreaker Create app in the Spreaker Studio app. Since I submit, that's where I publish all my stuff. And so it's kind of like a radio, kind of like recording a radio program without being live. So I'm trying it out. I actually had to cut it up in 2 parts because I forgot it. I was running late for work when I was recording the first part. So I had to finish it up today. But at least I'm finishing up the episode this week compared to the last month and a half. And I see that as progress. Now, unless you guys tell me that it sounds too horrible and not to do it again. So please let me know what you think about it. If you do listen to this, you can do it on the Facebook page, High on Paranormal, or you can email at highonparanormal@gmail.com. And then we can go ahead and see what you have to say. Just constructive criticism, please. No need to be rude. Other than that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. I'm going to be trying to put up some other episodes soon. I'm starting to look into some of the history from around here in upstate New York. And I'm not sure if I want to do stories of description of the place, let's say the Fox Sisters' house or whatever, like a description of the place and blah, 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 or, I'm not sure. I gotta see. So I want to try some little bits and pieces here and there, because I found a book that it has pretty good story of some of the stuff around here within the paranormal side, obviously. So I hope you all had a good ride. Finish up your bowl or your smokes, relax, and well, we'll talk to you next time.